Now, trying to find the words to kickstart this video as we find ourselves in this position, and I'm not talking about the fact that I wore a Mercedes cap to drive a BMW for the day, but in fact the chain of events that have led up to this point where I've been eager to get back behind the wheel and have an extended test drive, go about my day, use this car as a daily driver. Because when I first drove the car, I was pretty aggressive about it. I did not like it at all. And I was going in with the mindset of what my F-Series M3 gave me and how it made me feel, to then jump into this car, which in this video we will cover my first impressions, but also having driven it pretty much all day since collecting it from Saxton 4x4 this morning. And well, it's gonna be a little bit of a story time, a bit of an adventure, and by the end of the video, you'll probably feel like you've come on the same BMW journey as I have. All right then, here we go, back behind the wheel of a BMW M3. And actually, other than the M3 Touring that I drove down in Monaco quite a lot, although it wasn't really on camera too much, this is the first G-Series M3 saloon that I've driven, and I've been driving it around all day. I've got nearly 86 miles of fuel, so yeah, I've been putting it through its paces and wanting to get an understanding of this car on a number of different roads out here in the Essex countrysides, because, well, here we go. Let's just go straight into the story, because I constantly get confused by BMW and their bloody designers. Like a lot of us, when they launch a car, you go, well, that looks the worst thing they've launched since the last car they launched. And then over time, it's like the designers are ahead of time and totally understand the way that our brains function, because a lot of people didn't like the grills on this, and all of a sudden almost everyone does. There are still a few people that don't. Then they've launched the i7, the XM, the iX, the M2, all of which I've not been massive fans of. And well, having experienced the M3 Touring down in the south of France, then on the way back, whilst I was driving, not that I caught it on camera, I saw my first 2023 BMW M2 in the launch spec, which was like that pale, almost pastel-y crayon blue. When that car launched, I'd written it off as one of the ugliest cars I've ever launched, especially when the previous M2 competition, which I had in a black, was such a good looking car, and still to this day I think carries so much road presence. How can they get it so wrong? Or at least, how can they get a car that photographs so wrong? Because in the flesh, don't know whether any of you guys have seen one, it actually looks quite cool. So it got me thinking, whilst I was driving the R8 back from Monaco, knowing that I was going to Le Mans, knowing that I was getting excited about some of the cars that I was driving, I've made a beeline for this car, because there's a number of things that I want to discuss. And well, whilst the Golf GTI at the moment is staying, I'm still on the hunt for a car that can replace it. A more grown-up car, potentially a slightly bigger car. And this car popped up on the Saxton 4x4 website, and I can guarantee, as this video goes live, this car won't be for sale. It only arrived 2 days ago, but these cars do not hang about. But I have asked the legends at Forza Finance to give me some finance quotes on it, just so that I can get an understanding of how much more per month I'm gonna need for this much performance. And one of the last cars that I have driven from Saxton 4x4 on my hunt for a new daily was an M5 competition. A very heavy, luxurious... That is a joke. I haven't got a GoPro facing out front at the moment, but a Citroen Berlingo has just completely pulled out on me. What can you do? The way this thing picks up, it is so much lighter, it is so much more responsive than the M5 competition that I drove a couple of months ago. And this was the performance that we were exerting down in the south of France in Seb's Touring. And it was, well, the ultimate package in the grand scheme of things. I loved my M3. It's one of the cars that I still lust after now, and I didn't even have the M3 competition. And so here we are in a much more modern, a much more smooth, potentially more numb experience, but a much more sorted out. There isn't a break in traction, it doesn't want to kill you, which has taken a little bit of the soul away from the M3, M4, and I think that was what I was most disappointed by when I drove it first up in Farnborough with BMW. And driving Seb's M3 and seeing the amount of attention it gets and seeing how good that car looks on camera in satin black, and almost arc back to my M3 when I had it all blacked out, full satin black, even the badges were blacked out. It did get me thinking, I need another BMW in my life, and especially because I actually experienced an entire week with the BMW M240i and I fell in love with it. It was the first car that I hated the outside of but could not wait to get inside and drive it, and I just didn't want to get out of it. That's a really rare thing. For me, I always like the way a car looks on the road and almost am never that fussed about how it drives. For example, the Murcielago. And I've got a few opportunities lined up to drive new Mercedes, to drive Audis, and it keeps coming back to a thick, chunky BMW steering wheel. Didn't know where I was going with that sentence, but they are some of the best cars that can do all of the daily driver stuff and then can give you all of the performance you ever need to then have a lot of fun on some of the country roads. And then you throw the M3 in with the 4 doors and the big boot, and you've got all of the practicality. So we were talking, Seb and Sam, at dinner about the M3 Touring. Both of them who had experienced it no end, living with it, saying it was one of the best cars that you could possibly buy. And I know that this car's been out for a while. I didn't buy my F-Series M3 when it was brand new. I jumped into that when it was 3, maybe 4 years old. So is now the time to buy one of these, seeing as they've depreciated a little bit? Or do you go and buy a car that is 60 to 70% of this car, but around 45 grand with the M240i? Or do I look for a cancelled order of a BMW M2 because they are continually delayed, that could fall into my timeline perfectly of selling the Golf and needing a new daily to replace it, and then potentially benefit from a car that could be trading over list, meaning if it increases in price because people want to start skipping the queue and they want to jump into the used cars, the price starts to go up. So I could potentially get away with having 6 to 12 months free motoring if I can nick a cancelled order on the new BMW M2. Now that I've seen it in the flesh and I've realised it's actually quite a cool car on the road. I'm not entirely sure how long I'll be able to stay here because I'm currently blocking a single track road that goes down to a public car park down there. So fingers crossed everyone got their dog walking done this morning, because I've now been driving this car around pretty much the entire day. And the one thing that I've come to the realisation of is quite a lot of times when we get handed the keys to brand new cars, we don't get given long enough to form a well-rounded opinion on the car. We get to see a slither of what it's like on, most of the time, manufacturer chosen roads. So it's smooth tarmac, it's nice twisty smooth corners. And whilst I was down in the south of France, I was able to experience the M3 Touring on all different types of roads. And then also speaking to Seb, an owner of the car, I got to hear the pros and the cons. So then coming down to Saxton 4x4, jumping into this car, their only BMW M3 in stock. They just sold a beautiful purple BMW M4. I have this battle with myself. Do I need the 4 doors, or can I get away with a 2-door, the M4 or the M240i? Because when you start to consider the depreciation, the fact that both of these cars now, they've hung around for a couple of years, this car with 10% down, around 60, 65 grand, is approximately 650, maybe 700 pounds a month, depending on the miles and depending on how many miles you do over the term of the finance. And then Forza Finance then threw together the BMW M240i because the guys at Sexton used to have one. Again, it sold too quick before I was able to drive it, but it was a really nice blue. I don't know the exact BMW colour, but that was coming in. It was around a 45 grand car. I think it was just over 500 quid. That would make sense because my BMW M2 competition was a 42 grand car. I did £4,000 down and it was around £480 a month. But obviously interest rates have gone like this. Therefore, you have to expect higher monthly payments. So considering I'm paying around £400 a month on my Golf GTI anyway, this is now the dilemma that I'm in, and it's a lovely dilemma to be in. If I do pull the trigger on a BMW, which one is it? Which one is going to be perfect for me in terms of creating the ultimate looking car, but at the same time, which one is going to be the best for my lifestyle and practicality? The Golf GTI is a great little hot hatch, and there is a 12-month honest review of that car coming very, very soon. But kind of feels like I need to get a car that's a little bit more grown up. If I have the option of going new M2 or used BMW M3, it's very hard not to ignore this car. 4 doors, incredible practicality, a really, really grown up level of performance, but still lightweight and responsive. So if you're considering this or an M5 competition, I'll go this all day long. But a lot of fun to drive this car. I've done about 80, 90 miles in this and managed to burn through quite a lot of fuel. A highly enjoyable car. A massive thank you to Sexton 4x4 and Forza Finance, who have excitedly launched their new website. I will leave all of the links in the description. Myself and Forza Finance have been so excited knowing this is all bubbling under the surface, and it has come on leaps and bounds, and they have launched it and it is absolutely fantastic. So head into the link in the description to check it out. I will see you soon, guys. There is a car arriving just as I'm about to sign off, so I'm gonna have to move. Take care. Goodbye.